An aluminum chassis on a Tamiya Midnight Pumpkin. Because why not?
Excellent!
Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning in to Poor Boys RC, where, as promised today, the CW01 is going to get a wicked upgrade in this gorgeous aluminum chassis that I found on eBay. Some of you guys wanted to see this thing get done because you're curious about this chassis yourselves, wondering how it's going to fit, how the parts are going to transfer over. And just FYI, there's a full aluminum upgrade kit available for this chassis. When I say kit, I mean literally every component of the CW01 chassis is available in full aluminum. Now, I'm not going to go with every part in aluminum. I don't think it's really necessary. And why the heck would you even bother upgrading to an aluminum chassis? Because why not, guys? It's just a fun thing to do. It's a platform that's been around forever, and I've said it 100 times, I'll say it again, the CW01 is still my favorite chassis that's been out there in the hobby grade RC world for a very long time. So why not breathe a little bit of new life into it with this new chassis? So let's get started.
Take an elegant classic, give it a custom paint scheme, extend the shackles, mount it on oversized tires, and you have Tamiya's latest customizing achievement, the Midnight Pumpkin.
Now, one of the first things to know, guys, is that the chassis does use metric hardware, so you are going to need your JIS or Phillips screwdrivers to work with the factory hardware. But as you upgrade to this aluminum chassis, which has some tapped holes here, you are going to need to use a 2mm hex wrench. So make sure you have one of those available. Also, the trusty T-wrench is going to come in handy for this swap over. So step one, guys, I'm going to remove all the electronics from the chassis. That seems like a logical place for me to start. The receiver, the ESC, and the steering servo. That part was pretty simple. Next, I think I'm just going to drop out the front suspension so I don't have these wobbly things floating all over the place. Let's get those guys out next. Starting to look pretty bare. Let's get the rear axle out now. Rear axle's out. Chassis is, well, I guess I gotta get the front bumper off. Let's get that front bumper off. Chassis to chassis comparison. Let's see the differences. So that was pretty simple, guys. That took 15 minutes to take it all apart. Now let's see if it goes back together as easily as it was taken apart. So the chassis did come with a little instruction manual, which we are going to use for some of this because some of the screws that we're going to use are going to change. For example, with this RC Renew kit, we used these big old self-tappers. And we are going to switch to a machine screw. So that'll be interesting. We're off to a good start. That back end fits in there pretty good. But this is a good start because the wheelbase extension kit does fit in here, which makes me all sorts of happy because I was concerned about that. I really wanted to have that wheelbase extension kit in here, and we'll dive into that reason in a little bit. You're probably thinking to yourselves, what are you gonna do with this thing, Phil? Oh, we've got some plans, boys. We got some plans. Yeah, and speaking of which, I think next step, we're gonna put in the battery tray. So let's get that guy in. So in this case, guys, we're going to have to remove these screws because again, these are like a self-tapping screw. Get rid of those and use the hardware that they have installed in the chassis right here. And on these screws back here, I'm gonna reuse the factory hardware because the hole's already tapped for it. I know it's gonna work and I don't need to switch to metric. So I'm gonna start with these guys. So that was pretty easy, guys. Don't mind the big fur ball butt here. That's my buddy Gary. He likes doing these jobs with me. Thanks for the help today, Gare. Okay, what's next? I think next step is to put the bulkhead on. D4, bulkhead, what do we got? So the instructions look like they're telling us to use the 3 screws that came in the chassis for the 3 rearmost holes. So I'm just gonna start that. Oh, and always a good tip, guys, when screwing into these tapped holes, it's just a smidge of Loctite on there. You don't need a ton. Kind of got a ton on there, so I'm gonna share it with the other screws. A little bit of Loctite goes a long way. Those 3 are in. Now it's telling me to come from above and use the 3 screws that came with the kit. Now in this case, I'm gonna be screwing into plastic, so I'm not gonna worry about the Loctite. And Gary really wants to be on camera for this one, apparently. So. All right, screws are in. What's next, gang? I think next step would be let's do the front suspension. Now, the Midnight Pumpkin has these funny pogo sticks for front suspension and rear suspension in stock format. I don't know if that's gonna work with this chassis. So if you have not upgraded to aluminum shocks yet, you might wanna consider it before doing this. I'm not gonna go through the process of trying to test it, see if it works. I don't think it's going to work. There is a hole here in the chassis, so maybe your pogo stick suspension might work through that. I really don't know, guys. But in this case, I've got aluminum oil-filled shocks, and that's what I'm gonna use here. And what's really cool about it is the chassis is sort of designed to work with the aluminum shocks. And believe it or not, guys, for the purpose of this video with these shocks, it does fit. Wow, very cool. Now, these shocks these are Venturas. I've done reviews on them. If you want to know more about them, please just scroll through my videos. You will see reviews on them. I've used these shocks in the Pumpkin for a while now, and I love them. Now, I'm talking about them because they're not the widest bodied shock out there. I think that's why this is working so well. I think that like if you went with like a Tamiya CVA style shock, you may have to do a little bit of shimming. I think. I'm pretty sure the CVAs are a little bit wider than these Venturas are. So you may have to get creative to make it fit for your application. It's really kind of nice to work on this thing too, because being that it's aluminum, everything's just sort of open and you can see what you're doing. Whereas with like the resin style bathtub chassis, can't see through it. So a little bit of a different challenge. So that is super, super cool. That worked perfectly. We're off to a good start. So next I'm just going to reinstall this little T-brace. Sorry, I'm wearing a black t-shirt today, so you can't see the black parts so well. And I've got one extra little piece on there. That little piece right there. And that's another bit from RC Renew that I purchased a while ago. And that is the front camber correction kit. So that'll get reinstalled with this easily. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to drop the servo in. So with the stock bathtub chassis, you've got two servo mounting brackets, these guys right here. Brackets or mount, whatever the heck you want to call them, just these plastic rectangular bits. We are going to remove those. From what I can tell here, we're not going to need them. Now that is a lovely fit. That is actually really impressive. That fits in there. Sure, that was hard to see. I apologize for it. Again, it's hard to kind of record and do some of this work all at the same time, but look at that fit of that servo. It fits really nice and tight inside that opening, and the supplied hardware mounts up perfect. It's starting to look like a chassis again, guys. Look at this. So one thing I started to do off camera, and I'll mention to you guys, if you notice these screws here, they're not quite in all the way. And the previous build step had me put these screws in to hold in the front bulkhead. Well, when I attached the front bumper with the 3 factory screws, they're using the same hole, and they would actually make contact with one another. So I just backed them out a little bit, and I'm going to put a shorter screw in underneath here so I can have everything in nice and snug. So just something to be aware of. If you're putting the front end together and you feel some resistance there, don't go over tightening and stripping out the plastic. Okay, so with that said, it's time to get the rear suspension back and installed on this bad boy. Pretty easy stuff there, gang. And as you can see right here, you do have a second hole right there. Right there. You got a second hole. So I'm sure you could kind of play around with setups with your rear suspension. You can move the cross brace forward and move the shock back, whatever you wanted to do. I'm just using the center hole for now because I've got something planned for the rear suspension. And that's it, guys. That was super duper easy. Everything worked really well. Nothing weird came up, no odd challenges. The only thing I would say that you have to keep your eyes open for is this front bulkhead again. Just remember that these screws, you may have to adjust them, put a shorter screw in from underneath, however you want to go about it. That's the only thing to really make note of. But this thing looks badass, doesn't it? Take a closer look, boys. Oh yeah, that looks just menacing. I love it. Very, very cool. And look at all this open space up here before where you had that hard plastic tray. Now look, you can just access all your motor wires and everything right in through here. Have a really nice clean and tidy install. How cool is that? But no guys, listen, I'm really happy with this. I really like how it turned out. These front support braces, I don't know. I don't think I love the way those look. I think I'd like to maybe remove those and just see what, see how that affects the chassis. Might not be the smartest thing to do. I don't know, we'll play around with it. I don't love the way those look up front. They do look kind of cool, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll grow on me. We'll see. But at any rate, this is the chassis. Everything went together really smooth, guys. Instructions are as simple to follow as could possibly be. So if you're considering getting one of these chassis, considering how it's going to fit, all that jazz, here you go. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments section below. Always happy to answer all you guys. And please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. It does really help us YouTube content creators create more content, which is really what it's all about. 85% of you guys watching this show right now haven't subscribed. Seems like a crazy number. It's been that way for a long time. If you can please take a second, just click that button, give me a subscription. I would really appreciate it. And throw in a thumbs up too, because it really does help the algorithm and just help the video float back to the top so more RC addicts like ourselves can enjoy them. Means a lot, guys. Thank you. So with all that out of the way, guys, I do have a couple more option upgrades, option number 1 upgrades that we're going to do to this chassis today. Option number 1. Now, I just came across these guys on eBay, and they're selling really nice quality parts. From what I can tell, everything I've bought from them so far has been really of an impressive quality. And they're doing hop-ups for a lot of Tamiya kits out there, which is super, super cool. And their prices are really outstanding. So on top of this, I'm going to add this rear shock mounting kit. So what this will do is move the rear shocks, kind of splay them out a little bit more on the rear end. And is that going to make it perform better? Again, I don't know. But with the wheelbase extension kit, the shocks splayed out a bit more. My thought is we're going to lengthen that wheelbase, make it feel a little bit longer, a little more stable. Speaking of stability, also got the option number 1 wheelie bar, which is a nice big honking wheelie bar with the nice really big tire on the back there. That's going to help keep this sucker planted. The factory wheelie bar has definitely seen better days. And so you're probably wondering, what are you going to do with all this stuff? Well, I think it would be a lot of fun to make a really, really fast CW01. Make a speed run video with a CW01. So I'm just going to leave that right there for now. I'm going to get the rest of this stuff installed and start playing around with this chassis a little bit more. Thanks again so much for watching, guys. And stay tuned for more of the CW01 adventure as we start doing some speed runs and see what we can really get out of this old chassis, hey? Thanks for watching, guys. Love y'all. Be excellent to each other.